with the first lecture by Anna Zhyrkova from Jesuit University Ignatianum in Krakow. And Anna will give a talk, Can we predicate of and speak about God, and what are the rules for doing so, on the epistemological and logical premises of Conciliar Trinitarianism.
Hello, my name is Anna Zhyrkova. I work at Ignatianum, and now I'm going to present to all of you my paper on the subject, Can we predicate of and speak about God, and what are the rules for doing so, on the epistemological and logical premises of Conciliar Trinitarianism. Some time ago I was asked to participate in the project on analytical and philosophical approach to the issue of Trinitarianism from a patristic and conciliar perspective. This particular paper presents some thoughts and some results of my work on this project, which in full are going to be presented and published into papers and in one monographical study. So looking on this project, I found to my surprise that in many analytical and logical approaches to the Trinitarian question, to the question of to God in three hypostases, there are some very important, I would even say key epistemological and logical premises that they're laid down by conciliar doctrine, and by conciliar doctrine I mean doctrine which was developed during first councils, and especially Nicaea, for instance, largely omitted in present studies with analytical and philosophical approach to the subject. So in this paper I'm going to outline the ground rules concerning the very possibility of and what can be stipulated with respect to speaking about such a subject as God, i.e. about one who, at least according to the Christian faith, lies beyond any of intellectual capacities of created beings. Such ground rules were laid down by Basil of Caesarea and Gregory of Nyssa, two Cappadocian defenders of orthodoxy, who in fact had proved most influential at the First Council of Constantinople and are important until now the most important authorities on the subject. The present study aims to cast light on such matters by outlining the epistemological and logical premises developed during Trinitarian debates by the Cappadocian scholars, ones which for the most part function to define what counts as applicable to theological discourse when speaking about God, as well as in what precise sense and why and how this is so. These principles show very clearly the problems associated with addressing God in terms of substance and essence, issues that in fact underlie most of the difficulties and incoherences presented by Trinitarian discourse as such. So, first point, epistemological presuppositions concerning knowledge of God. The primary epistemological presupposition of any kind of talk about God is obvious, but should still be spelled out, as it seems to quite often be overlooked in the context of many particular lines of Trinitarian argumentation. It is that the human intellect has no knowledge of God except for his existence, and even this knowledge is conditional, to say the least. Basil the Great very generously embraced the view, known for its Epicurean and Stoic roots, according to which the human intellect is endowed with a shared conception of God's existence, one which affirms merely that God exists, while knowledge of God's existence, though needing to be revealed, is at least obtainable for human beings. Knowledge and understanding of the divine essence is absolutely impossible for any created being, angels included. Following the Cappadocians, it was unanimously accepted that there is no common or natural knowledge or understanding of the essence of God. What God reveals to us about himself, then is not his essence and substance, which no created intellect can grasp, be it that of a human being or that possessed by any other kind of being capable of engaging in intellectual activity and receiving knowledge. What is revealed is knowledge not of God's essence, but of the divine attributes, which should not be conceived of in terms of properties or accidents such as might variously be predicated of a substance. The attributes of the divine essence refer instead to the actions and powers of God manifested through the creation and ultimately revealed to us in the form of His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. In this way, our conception of God is made up of a multiplicity of attributes manifested and revealed to us, while any understanding of His essence as such nevertheless remains unattainable. It is important to realize that none of the features deducible through analysis of God's powers and actions directed at the created realm, on the basis of which one forms one idea and conception of God, suffice to disclose the divine essence. Those powers and actions, though of divine origin, are situated within the created realm and thus differ ontologically from their source. Characteristics ascribed to God on the basis of His actions either signify what He in essence is not, as uncreated, without beginning, incorporeal, etc., or something related to His essence or operation, as being good, creative, etc. In the end, it turns out that humans can attain some kind of knowledge of God's attributes only from what God has revealed to them, granting them a revelation that conforms to their capacities and needs. Hence, it is impossible to know or understand anything about God qua God and His essence, even within the limits of what created beings are capable of, beyond what has been revealed by Himself. The question that rightfully arises, namely, what in that case can be probably said about God? Thus, the premises and presuppositions of any talk about God do need to be clearly explicated as well. Now we are coming to the second point of my paper, which is the logical premises of attribution. Predication is speaking about God. The fact that God is beyond our knowledge doesn't rule out all possibilities of attributing appellations to Him. For what is attributed doesn't refer directly to God or to a divine essence. What God reveals to humans are features of His own actions and powers, which, as revealed, are perceived by the human intellect. Afterwards, what is revealed is subject to a process of analysis and comprehension. Intellect, reflecting on what it has received through revelation and or learned from observation, constructs a conception of God that comprises His characteristics as discerned through and in our thoughts. While such predicative appellations, which are assigned to His characteristic and used in reference to God, actually refer to our own thoughts and reflections pertaining to God's action and powers, and not to any subject such as would transcend absolutely the intellectual capacities of all created beings. It is as a consequence of intellectual reflection upon the actions and powers of God that one comes to understand both what cannot be ascribed to Him and what can be attributed to Him properly and with due reverence. However, it is necessary to remember that to be spoken of is different from to be. Especially in a case such as this, their essential predication is ruled out as completely impossible. With essential predication, in which something is predicated about a subject, but not about that subject as of something else, i.e. as belonging in turn to something outside itself, the very essence of a subject is revealed. This is because features predicated essentially of a certain subject are present in its logical parts. It is in this way, for instance, that humanity is predicated of a particular human being, such as Socrates, thus affirming the humanity of or in Socrates. In the case of God, though, there is no essential predication, as he is addressed only using the names we give to the divine activities revealed and manifested to human beings, not by means of names given to the very subject of those activities. On the one hand, as was pointed by Gregory of Nyssa, every appellation or name, e.g., just, imperishable, etc., said of the divine nature must be understood as if it were accompanied by the verb is. Thus, God is just, or the divine nature is imperishable, and so on. Otherwise, a name applied in some way to him would be referring to nothing at all. Gregory's claim entails that each name pertaining to God amounts syntactically to a categorical proposition of classical logic in which God, divine essence, serves as a subject accompanied by the copula is. The latter connects the subject with a predicate such as just, imperishable, etc. On the other hand, categorical propositions can be used in any kind of predication, including of the essential sort that, as we have seen, are simply impossible in cases of speaking about God. Gregory therefore suggests that propositions of the form A is X do not ascribe some feature X directly to A, but are rather verbal reports drawing their meaning from what is perceived about A. The copula is doesn't serve here to make a predicate a part of the very account of being. Accordingly, what is said of God is no more than extrinsic attribute, we only apprehend and ascribe attributes to his essence, which are now not equivalent to his essence as such. Indeed, one could say that from the point of view of semantics, this is not a case of predication at all. And in fact, practically all major authors of the Greek and Latin tradition shy away from describing this attribution in terms of predication, categorein or predicare, preferring terms following the model furnishing by expressions such as spiritual legate or dicitur de Deo, to speak about God. Conclusions. Examining the way in which Cappadocians try to express the mystery of the Trinity and considering also the form of Conciliar Trinitarian statements in which the Trinity seems to be characterized positively in terms of one substance and three hypostases, one may receive the impression that in the context of Trinitarian concerns, none of the above-mentioned epistemological and logical premises are in fact relevant. For it seems, indeed, that the very essence of God is expressed, after all, through those notions of substance, nature, and hypostasis person, which appear to be used as predications. And to this, we might add that the very inner life of the one divinity, i.e., being Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, is itself a subject of revelation. As something revealed, this truth, though in itself a mystery that cannot be comprehended and explained by any created intellect, becomes a subject of reflection, due to the very fact that its revelation has been necessarily transmitted and through human language. In this reflection on the Trinity, however, what is, for some reason or other, so easily forgotten is that this is not actually different from divinity, but rather identical with the latter, in spite of any differences with respect to the name for these or the meanings they convey. Thus, if it has been accepted that one may speak about the divine as something above and beyond any created essence and substance, then the same custom ought certainly to be adhered to there the Trinity is concerned as well. Then, engaging in Trinitarian discourse, one should keep in mind that the Holy Trinity is itself something above and beyond substance. The main problem then is this. The real truth about the triune God gives us a truly mysterious insight into the very reality of the divine essence, though the latter, as was stated above, lies absolutely beyond all human capacity of understanding. What is more, the issue of his essence is not one that can be addressed using appellations, given that these can only be correctly applied to God when employed to refer to his actions and powers, and not who he is in regard to his essence. But when anyone says that the divinity God is one substance in three hypostases, this will be precisely a case of so-called predication in essence. To forget about Gregory of Nyssa's claims that anything said about God is no more than a verbal report of what has been unveiled to us and doesn't reveal the very account of his being, is to commit a mistake not at all unlike the Eunomian heresy, condemned at First Council of Chalcedon. For someone holding that notions construed by the human mind, i.e. substance, nature, hypostasis, or person, can be applied simply and directly to a Trinity, and this can be subsequently be employed in logical arguments that themselves rely on rules of predications reflecting our common sense, view of how things and their properties relate to one another, certainly adheres to the Eunomian heterodoxy. Such a person is accepting that there are things which can be known, understood, and attributed to God in regard to his essence. In other words, we do not see the triune God as different from creation. In that way, unthinkingly applying to God meanings and rules that have been derived from language employed for the purposes of describing the created realm. It is undoubtedly the case that the Trinitarian proclamation of the ecumenical councils rejected the orthodox doctrine and established a set of criteria for expressing the theological truth of the mystery of the Trinity. Moreover, as was stated at the very outset, Trinitarian theology should certainly involve within the boundaries set by those criteria, adhering all the while to the direction laid out in considerable theological discussions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, that was Anna from Jesuit University Ignatianum in Krakow. If there are no questions here, I will ask the one that I received on the YouTube stream, and maybe if there will be any questions more, we'll get back to them. So the comment we received is following. Hello, Anna. You said, if I understood correctly, that created being cannot have knowledge about God, his essence. We can know about his divine attributes only. The end of quotation. Can we have knowledge of any other being's essence? Usually we can't have knowledge of any essences. Therefore, it is nothing new to say that we have no knowledge of God's essence, similarly as we have no knowledge of the essence of sunflowers, rabbits, and octopus. What we know are their attributes. I hope it is understandable.
Yes, I understand your question, but please understand something. There is very slight difference between God's essence and rabbit's essence. You see, the attributes which you can perceive about rabbits or flowers or butterflies are directly accessible to you through your epistemology, through your capacities of sight, hearing, touching, and other senses. Those essences are sensible and are accessible to you through aesthesis, as a sensible object. God is not a sensible object of any sort. You have no direct access to his attributes. You cannot touch it, you cannot see it, you cannot hear it, you cannot smell it, you cannot taste it. He is absolutely beyond our aesthetical, I would say so in Greek, senses, okay? So the basic difference is here. Those attributes which you can predicate about rabbits, you see yourself. You do not need any revelation, process of revelation. You do not need Bible. You do not need any mystical experience to say that rabbits are generally great. You cannot say anything like that about any attributes of God. I hope it is clear. Thank you. Yes, I see. Cool.
I can start. I liked it very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. I was wondering about this apophatic theology, and the one thing is to refer it to a rabbit or the kind of objects that you explained, and I think it's fine. The other thing is to refer to ourselves, to human essence, like the soul. And I think that this is interesting in the theology or the thought of Gregor of Nyssa, that he indicates that the soul is also unknowable, that we cannot know the essence of our soul. So when he says that we are created in the image of God, it doesn't mean that we can know something about the essence of God through our soul. It means that as God is unknowable, it is also ourselves. The soul is also impossible to be known. It's some kind of mystery. So we can see, we can understand only energeia of our soul, but not really the essence of our soul. It's a kind of mystery that is also within us. Would you agree with that?
There is one nuance, okay? In any case, God is an uncreated being. What is absolutely clear in Gregory of Nyssa is that you were speaking about Gregory of Nyssa, I understood. Yeah. So what is absolutely clear in him is that he believes in absolute difference, in metaphysical and ontological gap between the creator and the entire world of creation. So the only way how you can there is right way to use analogy. It's from creator to creation. So if creator is unknown and we are on the image of him, our souls are on the image of him. So this is the right direction of making analogy. But with this part of claim, I would agree. Absolutely, there is nothing to disagree about. My problem is that too many times, on the basis of Gregory's claims, for instance, on account of human souls, the people make argumentations backwards. On the basis of the nature of his accounts of something what is created, like human souls, are made arguments towards God. So if they are so and so, so God is so and so. This is no, big no in Gregory. You cannot go backwards. You cannot make something on the image of an image, because God is a source. We are only an image of God. You cannot speak about the source using as your explanatory example an image. So only this I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, one more comment, and I'll shut up later after that. I agree, and I think this apophatic thinking of Gregory of Nyssa is really beautiful. However, for an apophatic thinker, he really speaks a lot about God, and then there is my question. Okay, how does he refer to dogmas, or how does he see Christ? Is Christ the energeia of God, or or somehow he reveals something of the essence of God? And even if he reveals something about the essence of God, can this essence can it be known to us somehow? Yeah, it seems to me. It seems to me that that also this orthodoxy, Christian orthodoxy, didn't make it easy for Gregor of Nyssa. There was some kind of some kind of boundaries that he had to keep within. It was much easier for Origen 100 years earlier, when he was kind of freer to create ideas or theories that later on could be understood as heresies, whereas, he was not aware of it, as he says in his Theology of Seeking or something like that.
Okay, so here actually there are a lot of things in which I quite disagree. First of all, I wouldn't call Gregory of Nyssa as an adherent of apophatic theology. Apophatic theology was made by Dionysius Areopagita on the basis, pseudo-Dionysius, of Gregory of Nyssa. Gregory of Nyssa himself is not apophatic. I cut my paper almost in half. In the second half of the paper, I presented actually on what philosophical premises Gregory and his brother Basil built their ideas, and was their Stoic ideas first and foremost. And there is not that much apophatic in that, because there is support and there is justification of your knowledge of God by your experience. It is not what we cannot say anything about God. We can say precisely because we have access to him through revelation. And now we are coming to Jesus Christ. Is he only energeia? First of all, he is one of hypostases of triune God. He is not just an only energeia of God. He is a God. He is the God. But Jesus Christ, the second person of the Trinity, chose the entire God to reveal himself, his nature to us. This is done from his actions, and this is done in his straightforward words. The difference is, when you try to explain to a child of 2 or 3 old, child, there's a very small child, rules of Einstein theory, you can tell him everything in all details. My question is, would a child understand Einstein's theory? Probably not. So no matter whether we were given the full knowledge of God's essence, and we were given a full knowledge of the essence, which is actually the triune God, his inner relation with the Trinity, etc., etc. Even having this knowledge, it is impossible to say that we do understand it, because it is beyond our understanding. So Christ, as you said, he is an activity, because action of God, because he reveals what matters, and he is what matters itself. Other thing that you touch is the conception of dogma. First of all, there is no conception of dogma in Orthodox Church. There are no dogmas in Orthodox Church. There is a tradition, and this tradition is a living tradition which develops and changes every single time, remaining identity of its sources. So in that sense, Orthodox theology is much more free than what we used to think about Catholic theology. And Gregory, to say the truth, I don't think he had problems with orthodoxy. Actually, he came too many times so close to being an unorthodox, but no, he crossed a few times the borders of orthodoxy. And it's quite strange what he just was giving it, nobody, they tried not to notice, So, no, he was free-minded and free thinker, and besides, he used Origin, who you just mentioned, so many times and so extensively.
Okay.
So I don't see a problem. So thank you.